Got to get some thoughts off James Jones before I open it up to you, the brilliant Joy Taylor, and Dave Helman. I think Sirianni will inevitably be on the hot seat throughout the course of this season. Now, we may not say it right now in July, but the question Jeffrey Lurie, the question you Eagles fans should have for Nick Sirianni is this. What are you sure that he does well? Not what do you think he does well, not what do you hope he does well, not what do you expect him to do well. What are you sure that he does well? You talk about Andy Reid. I am sure he can dial up an offense. You talk about Kyle Shanahan. I am sure he can get the most out of his quarterbacks, from Robert Griffin to Matt Schaub to Matt Ryan to Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy. You talk about Sean McVay. I am sure that he will have a masterful offense. You talk about Mike Tomlin. I am sure that he can lead men. But what are you sure that Nick Sirianni can do well? And until you answer that question, I believe he will be on the hot seat. I'm not sure that Nick Sirianni can hire incredibly well, because after he lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, his following hires were not at all qualified. He's on his third defensive coordinator in 2 years. He's on his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. So I am not sure that he can hire incredibly well. I'm not sure he can call a great offense, because he doesn't necessarily call the offense. I'm not sure he can call a great defense, because he doesn't call the defense. I'm not sure that he can lead a group of men, because the team was disgruntled last year. So I'm not sure of what Nick Sirianni can do. I think he can do a lot really well. I think he can galvanize a group, because he galvanized a group to the Super Bowl, albeit it was probably the best or second best roster in the National Football League, but he still galvanized a group of men to the Super Bowl. But what are you sure that Nick Sirianni can do? And James, for me, until I can answer that question unequivocally beyond the shadow of a doubt, I do think Sirianni will likely be on the hot seat, because the other top coaches in football, they can hang their hat on something. Yeah. Sean McDermott will hang his hat on defense. Jim Harbaugh will hang his hat on, he will have a phenomenal running game, whether Stanford, whether Michigan, whether the San Francisco 49ers, he will run the football. I'm sure Shanahan going to have a quarterback. I'm sure. But with Nick Sirianni, I got some doubts. So I don't think he should necessarily be on the hot seat, but knowing Philadelphia Eagles coaches, what they did with Andy Reid after 5 NFC Championship appearances and firing him after 1 bad season, Doug Peterson leads the Eagles to the first Super Bowl win. They fire him after 3 seasons. Really, they parted ways. I know he likely will be on the hot seat, but what do you think? Should Sirianni be on the hot seat?
What do we want out of head coaches? What do we want them to do?
Get the most out of their players.
What you want them to do?
I knew where that was going.
Win, right? My man, 34-17, he ain't never missed the playoffs. We talk about these great coaches because we had a conversation last year during the season. Should this be Mike Tomlin's last year in Pittsburgh?
That was silly.
17 years without a losing season. We talked so bad about Mike McCarthy. 12 wins, 12 wins, 12 wins. What do we want out of head coaches? Because the other head coaches that we talk truly, truly highly about, and I'll start with Kyle Shanahan, he wins and he gets to the Super Bowl. What has he done that Nick Sirianni has not done?
Been consistently
larger sample size.
Since Nick Sirianni's been a head coach, he's been in the playoffs every single time and to a Super Bowl in 3 years. So there's really nothing that Kyle Shanahan does better than him, neither. And you can say, what I'm saying, you can say call the game, but as a coach, it's about winning. And the staff that he put together, 2 of those dudes is head coaches, Acho. Doing really well.
I can't even let you do that. I can't even let the sentence continue with you comparing Nick Sirianni to Kyle Shanahan.
I want to know your why.
For several reasons. Number one, Kyle Shanahan calls his offense, and he can replace his offensive minds when they leave. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan did the same thing. Robert Saleh goes to become a head coach of the Jets. DeMeco Ryans goes to become a head coach. Has a number 3 defense in football, and it's still like, you know what, you're not good enough. So you can't even speak of those two in the same breath.
But with all that being said, what has he accomplished different than Nick Sirianni? And we're saying Nick Sirianni should be on the hot seat.
Because I'm not just, you're making the same mistake that we made last year with the Eagles. I don't know if I made it, but the aspect of you're just looking at the outcome. What's the process? I hated James when, again, you can stumble into the right answer. And I'm not saying he stumbled into the right answer, but track with the analogy for me. There's a reason your teachers always ask you to show your work. Because if you can't show your work, I can't guarantee you can do it again. And because Nick Sirianni could not show his work, hey, how'd the Eagles get to the Super Bowl that year? Oh, you had one of the greatest defenses ever as it pertains to getting sacks? Can you do it again? No, you can't. Shanahan can show you his work. Going back to 08-09 with Matt Schaub, going to Robert Griffin in 2011, and this isn't a Shanahan block. But my point is, Tomlin can show you his work. McVay can show you his work. Reid can show you his work. Harbaugh can show you his work. Sirianni cannot show you his work.
So really quick, Nick Sirianni got the job in Philadelphia. Were they a good football team when he got the job? They was 4-something.
They were a chaotic football team.
And they were 4-something
Yes,
record-wise.
Coming off a really, really bad season.
Yeah.
Really, really bad season. And my man's first year, he goes to the playoffs.
Yeah.
The second year, he goes to the Super Bowl.
That happened.
And two of the coaches that you saying you don't know if he can hire are head coaches right now doing a really good job. Last year, worst year possible coaching by Nick Sirianni and all this type stuff. Worst year for Jalen Hurts. Worst year for people calling the plays. 11 wins and to the playoffs. And we're talking about a man should be fired or not fired, on the hot seat. I don't know what you want out of coaches. Like, what? So you basically telling me Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat if he has a losing season or it doesn't look the right way, and you're bringing in a coach to do what? Get to the playoffs? Because it's not saying all these great coaches we talk about ain't just winning Super Bowls.
True.
You understand what I'm saying? So, like, you getting rid of really good coaches to get somebody else, and you think they just finna go to the Super Bowl? He been there for 3 years. Ain't never had a losing season. To the playoffs every year. To the Super Bowl. Beat your coach to go to the Super Bowl. So I just, with these coaches on the hot seat, I don't know what you want. Tomlin was on the hot seat, 17 years, no losing season. Coach Mike on the hot seat, 12 wins, 12 wins, 12 wins. Now Nick Sirianni on the hot seat? That's crazy to me.
I do think there's a difference, though, and that's the key for Nick Sirianni, and that's why I think he should be. And kind of what you said, Acho, it doesn't really matter what I think should happen. He's the head coach in Philadelphia.
They always on the hot seat.
We're talking about one of the most football-crazy markets in the entire NFL. You said it. You realize I think there's 7 active coaches with a Super Bowl. Philly's chased off 2 of them. I mean, Andy hadn't won when he was in Philly, but an incredibly successful coach. Doug delivered the only Super Bowl in city history. They both got run off when the results didn't meet up to the standard. So how can we say Nick Sirianni won't be? And I'll go back to my original point. It's not about getting to the playoffs or getting to the Super Bowl. It's about the way last season ended. Because that's not just disappointing. To go from 10-1 to 11-6 and just getting shown the door in the wild card round by a Bucs team that had been mediocre all year, Bucs team that snuck into the playoffs by winning a bad division, it got really bad in Philadelphia. The play wasn't good. The vibes were terrible. I'm not in that locker room. I don't know what happened, but it was so obvious that the confidence of the team, the satisfaction, the happiness, the vibes that go along with being a good football team were gone by the end of that year. So it's not about winning a certain amount of games or getting to a certain round of the playoffs. But if that doesn't get fixed, then yes, he will be on the hot seat, and it'll be justified. Because, James, it's the same thing Acho just said. It's about consistency. Yes, Nick Sirianni built a Super Bowl team and a really impressive coaching staff. But when those guys go, how do you replace it? Kyle Shanahan has been amazing at reloading. You didn't even bring up Mike McDaniel.
And he got the same thing that Nick Sirianni has. That's all I'm saying.
I disagree.
And
I disagree.
No, you guys are giving credit just because they call the plays. That doesn't mean nothing. My man hired the people that called the plays.
I know they haven't been coaching for the same amount of time, but don't write off the fact that Kyle Shanahan got his team to an entirely different Super Bowl.
Why are we talking about Kyle Shanahan?
James brought him up.
It's true.
Okay, like Kyle Shanahan, I think, is in a different category than Nick Sirianni. He's been doing this for longer. He has more consistency at the highest level. They both have the same amount of Super Bowls to show for it. But in the past 3 years,
Super Bowl wins?
Super Bowls?
Not appearances, no.
Does one of them have a Super Bowl that I missed?
You're talking Super Bowl wins.
Yes. Did either of them win a Super Bowl? The answer is no. They both have the same amount of Super Bowl wins, which is 0.
Getting to 2 Super Bowls
is greater than getting
I'm not comparing Kyle Shanahan to Nick Sirianni.
All right.
I don't even think that needs to be in the conversation. Let's compare Nick Sirianni to Stefanski, or McDaniel, or Dable, or McDermott, or Saleh, or Zach Taylor.
They ain't on the hot seat.
How many of them have Super Bowls?
None.
Have they went to the playoffs every single year since they've been there?
No.
Did they have Super Bowl appearances?
No.
Only one of them does, Zach Taylor. Are we talking about them in the hot seat? Look, Nick Sirianni, what? Who? Some of them are.
Yeah, I'm like some of them.
Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor's in the hot seat?
I think Zach Taylor.
Zach Taylor's not in the hot seat.
I don't think
we're not doing a topic today about Zach Taylor being in the hot seat.
No, he's not famous.
What do you mean he's not famous?
I don't think people could pick Zach Taylor out of a lineup. But I don't want to distract anyone.
Nick Sirianni has made the playoffs all 3 seasons. They have the 5th best record in the NFL since he started coaching, and they won the division. They lost in the Super Bowl, where they played well, right? And then had a down season the year after the Super Bowl, which, statistically speaking, is very common. Very common. It's actually a complete outlier to do better than you did. The only one team has done it since the turn of the century. It's the Patriots. They had a pretty good quarterback there. His name's Tom Brady, legendary coach, and Bill Belichick. Nobody else can say that. It's called a Super Bowl hangover for a reason. If he gets to the playoffs again, that's not good enough. My question is, like, what do you actually want?
I want Philadelphia to not completely collapse.
They did. They did completely collapse.
And
they also were at that height in order to completely collapse. Yes, it went badly last year, right? By Philadelphia standards, by the standards of coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, it went badly. Again, he's made the playoffs every single year. He was just in a Super Bowl. Super hard to do, right?
Very hard to do.
Super hard to get to a Super Bowl, right? We still agree that that's really, 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 really hard to do. Guys like Josh Allen and Sean McDermott haven't been to the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson, Harbaugh, together have not been to the Super Bowl. We can go down the list. I just don't know. You're asking about consistency. Making the playoffs every single year is pretty consistent. Right? Getting to a Super Bowl 2 years ago is a pretty nice thing to have. And he is great at hiring because his first original hires, his best hires, are now head coaches.
Only as good as your last
There's
one.
only so much good of anything. There's only one Joy Taylor. There's only so much good of anything. Yes, your replacement is not ideally always going to be as good as your first option. It's actually very, very, very hard. It's a really rare skill to be able to replace coordinators like that.
See, that's where I disagree.
Who does it well?
Depending on the teacher, because you brought this up and had to think about it. Obviously, I'm going to start with the Mecca, which is Andy Reid. What Andy Reid did was hire Doug Peterson in 2013-15.
Let's say Andy Reid. Let's say that Andy Reid is the best.
But here's my thought process:
I want to hear this.
If you're great, you promote from within. You get Doug, Doug's gone. You get Brad, Brad's gone. You get Nagy, Nagy goes to become head coach. You get Bieniemy goes to coach in college. You bring Nagy back to coach UCLA. You bring Nagy back. To me, if you are the brainchild,
who calling the plays though? I think that's
Andy.
But that's what I'm saying. So we can't do that to Nick Sirianni because he's not calling the plays.
But then, James, what does Sirianni do great?
Win.
Great. How?
The people that he puts around to be in charge to win.
So this is where, if you're the general manager, if you're Howie Roseman, I'm looking around saying, I did my job. Sirianni,
he doesn't coach the team.
No, but if you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Lane Johnson, Jay Kelly,
so are we saying
Jordan
that
Mailata,
being a head coach is not a job anymore?
definitely didn't say that.
Coordinating and leading a team as the head coach, not as the play caller, but as the head coach is not a job. It has no requirements. It doesn't take any man hours and intelligence to do that.
I wouldn't say that's hyperbole. I'm not saying that.
Okay, so he's the one running the ship.
Correct. And
the ship has been to the playoffs 3 years in a row in the Super Bowl.
True.
Being in the playoffs 3 years in a row is doing so much work when 2 of those 3 trips to the playoffs
Let's go down the teams that didn't make it to the playoffs 3 years in a row. Should we do that with the coaches that are returning?
Joy, we're talking about Philadelphia.
So then we're just saying that Philadelphia has standards that the rest of the NFL doesn't have. Because Sirianni will get another job.
I think Philadelphia has a standard that very few markets in the NFL have.
We're not having a real conversation about standards around the NFL. We shouldn't bring anybody else up. We should just talk about what the standard is for Philadelphia.
For Sirianni.
So we shouldn't mention Reid. We shouldn't mention Harbaugh. We shouldn't mention any of these other guys who have not the same resume as Sirianni does in the last 3 years.
But I just don't understand, again, we made this mistake last year with the Eagles. I didn't, because I'm always focused about the process. We were like, the Eagles keep winning, they keep winning, they keep winning. But I'm like, but why, Shady? Why are they winning? Acho, it doesn't matter, they keep winning. I'm like, Shady, this winning will stop. And you're not going to be able to fix it once it stops because they're not playing good football. So Sirianni, he wins, and he does win. But if y'all can't tell me why he wins, last year, I could tell you the why they went wrong. The defensive coordinator out of whack. The offensive coordinator out of whack. What offense are you running this year?
But you ain't said Nick Sirianni's name yet, though. I think we're giving Nick Sirianni a bad rap because he don't call offense or defense. I think that's wrong to do. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if anything, he should get a little bit more credit. I don't call offense or defense, and every year I'm winning.
Then
the same way Harbaugh. Harbaugh, what, special teams coach? And we continue to say the run game. Like, you ain't calling that.
I'd be cool, James, if I could guarantee that Sirianni hired well. I can't, because right now he's 50-50. Really, he's not even 50-50.
Well. His first choice did hire well.
Correct.
You can't compare him to guys like Andy Reid. And also, nobody's saying he's as great as Andy Reid.
No,
Andy Reid is the best maybe ever to do that.
Then I'll say it like this, Harbaugh. Let's go with your Harbaugh point. What did Harbaugh even do with his defensive coordinators? He hires Wink Martindale. Wink dips, goes to the Giants. He hires Mike McDonald. McDonald's dips, goes to become the head coach of the Seahawks. He hired Rex Ryan or Rob. Before everybody was like Rex or Rob is his DC.
He had Rex way back in
He had Rex. Is like, if Harbaugh don't call it, Harbaugh gonna keep a good coordinator.
How long has Harbaugh been coaching?
Long time.
Second longest to Tomlin.
As long as
How long has Andy Reid been coaching?
Long time.
How long has Kyle Shanahan been coaching? In 3 years' time, his original hires were great. They both got head coaching jobs.
But see,
and their replacements in 1 year were not great.
That is true.
That's very true.
But where I disagree, and the reason why if I'm worried about the Eagles, it's that this was a team that was a couple of plays away from a championship. They were en route to the #1 seed. I think that
everyone who loses the Super Bowl does this.
But that context matters to me because, again, this looked like a team that looked like it was going to be right back where it was.
But they never are.
Until it wasn't. And now, again, this is a team full of, you just mentioned I mean, this team is loaded with all pros. Proud, great players. They know what it looks like when it's good. They know what it looks like when it's bad.
Dave,
and if it's bad again this year,
a Super Bowl
we could
loss,
go way off the rails.
Who comes off a Super Bowl loss and gets better? Three teams in the last... No, like increases their regular season record. Like, who does that? There's 3 teams that have done it, and only one of those other teams has actually gone back to win the Super Bowl.
But they spent
so we say this every year about teams that go to a Super Bowl.
They spent 3 months living up to the expectation that was set for them. 10-1.
Yes,
yeah, but
what
you
I'm
guys are still saying
is,
that Nick Sirianni
historically speaking,
that
it just doesn't happen that way.
That's what y'all telling me. The way it looked, Nick Sirianni had nothing to do with that.
Had nothing to do with what exactly?
The way they was winning, because he don't call the plays, he don't do that. Like, the way they were playing football was bad, but they were gutting out wins. Y'all telling me that don't matter. That's what y'all.
To me, what matters is if Nick Sirianni doesn't call plays, right, which you established, then Nick Sirianni, you better hire well. And if you can't hire well, you better develop well.
How do you know he doesn't hire well? We can't say he's a 50-50 hire.
I think this is the year.
The reason I have to say that is because if you're on 3 DCs in 2 years, that's a problem.
But one of them got a head coaching job, though, Acho.
Correct. And the other you hired in the middle of the season, then you fired him in the middle of the season. You hired Matt Patricia, then you fired him.
He's been coaching for 3 seasons, right?
Correct.
So half of his hires have been excellent, and half have not been good.
The problem is truly, statistically, no.
Why?
Because they hired Sean Desai middle of the season, fired him middle of the season. Matt Patricia after that, fired him after that. Vic Fangio. I'm not counting the coach that became a head coach.
I don't.
Why? Why are you discounting what he did at great?
No, I'm saying James said there's 3 hires and 1 got promoted. I'm saying disregard the one that got promoted.
Why?
Saying,
he hired him.
No. You're not hearing what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I'm saying he's had 3 different DCs outside of the one that got promoted. That's what I'm saying.
And
like there's 3 more outside.
And with all that being said, he in the playoffs, and a lot of these other coaches is at home. So I'm just trying to understand, and I don't want to bring a bunch of other head coaches in here.
But we shouldn't, because that's not the standard, clearly. He's in the hot seat only because he's in Philadelphia. So we really shouldn't be bringing up anybody else's standard. Because there's other coaches who haven't been to Super Bowls, who haven't been to 3 straight playoff trips,
I think
who aren't in the hot seat.
Philadelphia will be making a big, big mistake if this season doesn't go as planned and they let go of Nick Sirianni with what Nick Sirianni has showed us, whether he's calling the games or not.
What do y'all think we're going to be talking about on this show in December if the Eagles are like 9-6 and it's just a struggle every single week?
Well, I would hope it's about the play of the players. I'm not saying the coach doesn't get no credit, but if Jalen Hurts is out there looking bad and not making plays, or the defense is looking crazy, I would hope we would start there.
I mean, and I'm sure we will, but again, I mean, the quarterback has been paid. A.J. Brown was just extended at a big, big number. Somebody's got to be the fall guy in these situations, and often it is the head coach.
I'm just saying, really quick, Acho. Can he have a losing season before you say he's on the hot seat?
No, because think about Andy, bro.
This don't sound crazy.
This roster has a losing season.
No, he's for sure fired.
No way.
I mean, think about it, Jay. Chip Kelly replaces Andy Reid. Andy Reid may be the greatest coach in Eagles history, but some would argue Buddy. If Chip replaces Andy, right?
But
Instantly, we won 10.
Andy was there forever, though.
But he had a losing season.
What did Chip Kelly do? What were Chip Kelly's years?
He instantly won 10, went to the playoffs. So like, oh,
And then what happened?
fine. Now he instantly won a 10 again.
No. What happened in the playoffs?
We lost to the Saints at home.
Round one?
Round one.
Then what happened next year?
Instantly win 10 again.
And then what happened?
Now we don't go to the playoffs. But remember, 6 teams go.
Okay, so they made the
again.
playoffs, lost in the wild card round. Next year they went to the playoffs.
Then losing season.
Okay, what Nick Sirianni did in those times was went to the playoffs, lost in the wild card. Okay, so let's say same. Then went to the Super Bowl.
True.
Okay, in the year that Chip Kelly missed the playoffs with 10 wins, Nick Sirianni went to the Super Bowl. And then last year, with 11 wins, went to the playoffs.
Cool. Now do Doug.
Listen, I'm not saying that Philadelphia doesn't have its own standards. What I'm saying is these standards don't apply to the rest of the league. So we just shouldn't be bringing up other coaches. Because there are other coaches around the league who have been with their teams for multiple years. And the only one that can say it, and can't even really say it because he's missed the playoffs, is Zach Taylor. He's the only one with a Super Bowl appearance. Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.